Dr. Richard Stallman, who invented the GNU Linux system, has a big free software, internet freedom organization. Again, sir, I'm literally a troglodyte when it comes to all these terms. Again, reintroduce yourself for folks that don't know, and I'm just going to sit back, shut up, and hear what your solutions are, ways to fight this. You got cut off by the break with how do we stop the governments from trashing the web. They openly say the people are kicking their butt. They don't like free speech. I get restricted everywhere by MySpace, YouTube. They admit I'm censored. I'm just little old Alex Jones. You got the floor, sir.
Well, what I started 25 years ago was developing a free software operating system called GNU. And the idea is free software is software that respects your freedom, and you control it. The users control it individually if they know how and want to go to the trouble, but also the users collectively control it. Any group of users that want the program to work a certain way, they're free to develop their version which works that way. Those who know how to program do it, and those who have the same preferences use that version, and if they don't like that version, they use some other version. And you can also pay people to make the changes you want. So, for instance, your show, if you wanted to change a free program, well, you personally don't know how, maybe none of your staff knows how, but there are companies that would make those changes, just as there are carpenters you could hire to make changes in your office. And they'll just do the work the way you want it done. And if you want to change it again some other day, you can hire somebody else, because nobody has a monopoly. It's a free market, this business of support for free software.
And does that allow a kind of evolution? It seems like where the non-free softwares are stagnant, except for minor changes, this accelerates development, doesn't it?
Well, it may or may not. I won't claim that all non-free programs are stagnant. That depends how much work the developer is putting in. But regardless of whether it makes fast progress or slow progress, it makes progress in the direction that the developer wants. And if there's something the developer doesn't want you to be able to do, like, for instance, access a certain file more than 5 times, he'll program it not to let you. So proprietary programs frequently have these malicious features, which we call digital restrictions management, or DRM, or digital handcuffs. They are designed to stop you from doing things. So that program may not be your servant. It may be your prison guard. In any case, these are things that we can take control of ourselves. We can free ourselves and each other, and that's what we've been doing in the free software movement since I started it. But there are other areas where we just can't solve the problem that way. Surveillance in the internet service provider. Well, we can't stop that by choosing to use a different program in our own computers, because it's not happening in our computers. It's happening in some central office. Now, one thing that helps somewhat is to use programs like the GNU Privacy Guard for encryption of the messages and files we send each other. But even even encryption doesn't do the whole job. And when there's censorship, in Australia, the main organization that fights for civil liberties on the internet, which is Electronic Frontiers Australia, was forced to take down a link that they had put up in a discussion of censorship, showing what kinds of things are getting censored. Well, they were forced to take down that link on the threat of being fined $11,000 a day.
Yeah, let me back you up on that. They've announced, the government itself calls it Chinese-style net censorship, and proudly are now issuing hundreds and hundreds of sites. They're now saying thousands on these lists that you can't visit, you can't link to, and then you can't link and say, look, WikiLeaks leaking government documents. You can't even say that's been censored. That's very 1984 Kafkaesque.
Yeah, well, the Australian government has been trashing human rights for many years, typically in the name of preventing terrorism, as many other governments are doing. Any given week their excuse is either terrorists or pedophiles, but neither of them is anywhere near as dangerous as governments that don't respect our freedom.
Absolutely. Historically, governments killed 200 and something million people last century. I mean, tyranny has gotten a whole new lease on life. So specifically, what do we do? I mean, if citizens and companies try to go with free software solutions and support groups like yours, what else can we do? I mean, I guess we vote with our dollars, we vote with our time. I mean, let's say I'm a company with 20-something. Yeah.
For centralized surveillance and censorship, they don't let you vote with your time or with your dollars. You know, if you're in Australia and you want to make links to these forbidden sites, for instance, the political sites that talk about Australian censorship, you can't do that by picking one company over another. You'd have to put your site outside Australia, and then maybe Australia wouldn't let anybody link to your site.
Yeah, that's the key. That's what Australia's saying they're going to do, is block most of the web. But, I mean, that's the key, is that's what Homeland Security has announced, that they're going to take over all the infrastructure, even of private companies, and as indentured servants, they have to allow Pentagon, Air Forces, who's running it, snooping hubs that control and save all the data. This is open. I mean, this makes what Bush was doing look tame in comparison, and I'm nonpartisan. So I guess it doesn't matter because they're seizing the infrastructure. This is criminal.
It is, and the solution I've been using is no good for this. So what can we do? We have to organize politically in mass organizations. The only organization that I know of in the U.S. that fights against these things is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, although I think the American Civil Liberties Union fights also against some of them. So both of those organizations deserve your support.
You know, is it that Americans and Australians and British and others have had so much freedom in the past we can't believe it's happening here? Or have we lied to ourselves about how much freedom was really in our society?
I think that it's a combination of both. It's certainly the case that there was much less surveillance of all our communication in the past. You see, this is one thing that digital technology makes much easier. In the 1960s, I don't think anything kept track of who you called locally. The phone exchange didn't keep track. It just counted up how many calls you made and sometimes how long they were. The only thing you got on your bill was long-distance calls because they were expensive and people wanted to know what they were being billed for. Now, in France, after World War II, the government insisted that the phone company must not keep any records of who called whom. And the reason was that when the Nazis took over France, they looked at those records to see who spoke to whom, and that way, if they knew that one person seemed to be possibly a center of political opposition, they would not only arrest him, but they would question all the people he tended to make phone calls to. So after the war, the French government and various other governments in Europe established rules that the phone companies were not allowed to keep track. However, of course, they've changed all that.
Well, exactly. I just saw a story in the London Telegraph. In fact, guys, will you search engine this? People have corrected me not to just always say Google. We need to plug Lycos and Scroogle.org and everybody else. In fact, I'll ask you what you think are some good alternatives because I think Google is becoming evil, at least from what I've seen. But it was in the French news that people were real mad that a guy's friend sent him a message saying, don't blow up the train, because he was going on a ride, and they were there waiting for him when he got to the train station. There was another case at an airport where they made a joke in another European country, and they admitted, they said, oh, no, the phone companies have AI, NSA-type keyword, reading all of it and then flagging it. Everything is red. And that kind of freaked the French out to realize, but the same thing's going on here now. This is just so disgusting.
Well, one thing people can do about that is just throw these things randomly into phone calls the way people have done for a few decades, randomly into their messages. I don't know if anybody was ever looking for